Shall we predict? Anything else that we need to put on the table before we make our educated guesses?
Let's do it.
Christopher Brown. Who's going to win this and how many games?
I'm going to go with Dodgers in 6. I'm going to stick with my prediction for the Dodgers to win this World Series that I had preseason, that I had pre-postseason, that I'm going to stick with it now. And it's not like it's a bold choice that I don't deserve any credit for sticking with my choice because it's the Dodgers. But I'm sticking with the Dodgers. I'm saying Dodgers in 6. I think the Rays will find a way to get enough games here to make this a competitive series. But at the end of the day, it's stuff that we've talked about. It comes down to me to the variety of paths that these two teams have to win games. And I see more for the Dodgers than I do for the Rays. Both of these teams have a lot of depth. We're not looking at these teams and saying, oh, wow, it's not like, like the Braves, there was this top 2 in the rotation, then there was depth concerns. Like both of these teams have a lot of depth in pretty much every area. So I'm not really looking at that as I am looking at avenues for victory. And the Rays certainly have a formula. It's worked. It's gotten them here. But I see it being much more limited to their pitchers going out and limiting the Dodgers to just a couple runs because you're not counting on an offensive explosion from them. Meanwhile, the Dodgers, they had the pitchers to go out and hold the Rays to a run or less or 2. And they have the offense that even if your pitching has a night when they give up 4, 5, 6 runs to the Rays, you have an offense that is still going to have a fighting chance to score 6 or 7 or 8 runs to win that game. And they just have more hitters who are capable. They both have hitters that are capable of hurting you, but the Dodgers have more that have shown it this postseason, the ability to go out and make and string together hits. We haven't seen that from the Rays. And so, yeah, quite simply, it's the number of variety of paths to victory that's in the Dodgers' favor. I'm going Dodgers in 6.
I've got Dodgers in 6 as well. And Walker Buehler is a righty, so they got one righty out there. But your point is absolutely valid. They're going to throw a lot of lefties at a Rosevania, so he could very well have a good series with the way he's hitting right now. I'm right there with you, Chris. I also think the fact that the Dodgers have been here before matters, and the fact that they understand the disappointment of not getting the job done matters in a way that this Rays team, you just can't simulate a World Series, even if it's with less fans and in the neutral environment and all of that. I think this matchup is really friendly to the Dodgers as well, just because they have the starting depth to match the Rays, even if they're not going to win every single game in terms of getting the better performance from their starting pitcher. They don't fall off after Kershaw and Buehler. And then you've got all of the bats. The only way I can see the Rays winning this series is if their bullpen is phenomenal and they find a way to get to the Dodgers and cause some issues after you get past these 5 or 6 starters or traditional starters that they can throw for multiple innings and piece together however they want. And you also have the luxury of being able to use these guys more often because you have off days now, where the Rays are going to use the same guys every game anyway because they're all relievers and they all throw an inning or 2, and they've got the starting pitching depth. I just think it all sets up really nicely for the Dodgers. I feel like their ability to come back from 3-1 down is a sign that it's supposed to be their year. And after what the Tampa Bay Lightning did in the NHL, to me, it just screams Dodgers get this done.
You might need to explain that more, considering you just talked about a team that's also from Tampa Bay. You're of course referring to the fact that Tampa Bay was awesome last year, and then not having fans or the constant pressure of fans in the stands helped them sort of relax a little bit, which is certainly, I think, a very valid and accurate point to make. I'm going to be a little more frisky and say Dodgers in 5, just so we don't always all say Dodgers in 6. I think the hitting is just going to be too much, whether that means that it's too much for the bullpen or they get to two of those three starters in the first round, in the first cycle through the rotation. I'm playing with fire here, but I think Kershaw is going to have a good start in game one. I think also not having to do it in front of a Dodgers sellout crowd is a good thing for Clayton Kershaw. I find it hard to believe they're going to be able to hit the baseball enough, that being the Rays, and string enough runs together. And because the only way I think the Rays win the series is if they out home run the Dodgers, and the Dodgers just hit 16 home runs in the NLCS. Like, that's not going to happen. There will be a game that's a quote unquote pitcher's duel, but that's only because the Rays put together the perfect game and they win it 3-1. Because it won't be a pitcher's duel in the sense that both guys go 7 2/3. That I think plays into the Dodgers' hands. I think that switching pitchers gives the Dodgers life, even if they're not hitting the baseball well against the previous guy. Just getting to see a new guy is in some ways helpful for the pitcher, but in other ways, if you're not hitting the pitcher before, I mean, we all played Little League baseball. The idea of the guy coming out of the game so that we can get the guy who's in relief, who's clearly not the best pitcher on the other team, like that's rejuvenating. And up and down that Dodgers lineup, it's just too much. I'll go Dodgers in 5.
Yeah, the Rays, I feel like you have to, like, the Rays pitching can be good, and the definition of good Rays pitching against this Dodgers offense is different than good Rays pitching against the Orioles, right? I mean, that's kind of obvious, but the Rays pitching can be good, and that means giving up 3 or 4 or 5 runs a game, and that's still like generally good against the Dodgers offense. And that means that we need to see more from the Rays offense than we have seen. Like, the pitching could be good for them, and the offense could be the same, and that's not going to be enough, because just good against a Dodgers team means you're going to have to score more runs than we really can count on the Rays scoring based on what we've seen. So that makes me feel like we have to see something from the Rays and stringing together hits, or really, really relying on the home run that we just haven't seen from them. Meanwhile, we've seen those kind of things from the Dodgers.
The only thing I will say is that if you gave me 2 teams to pick for the Rays pitching to prepare for a team like the Dodgers, it would be the Yankees and the Astros. And that's the only place I think you hang your hat on the way that the Rays play baseball, is that they just did it again. I mean, they scored 7 runs and 8 runs against the Yankees to get 2 wins in a series. And in those 2 games, the Yankees scored 5 runs and 4 runs in those 2 games. And it was a little bit different against the Astros, but they silenced those bats enough that were hotter than any bats in the postseason when they got to the ALCS. I still think that the Dodgers are a level above both of those teams. But if you're to hang your hat anywhere, it's the fact that there aren't teams with they're apart from the Dodgers, no teams have more weapons, at least in terms of name recognition, than the Yankees and the Astros, and they won series against both of them. But if they win the series, it's going to be because they found a way to scrap out 4 wins in 7 games, like they were able to scratch out a way to win 3 games against the Yankees in 5 and 4 games against the Astros in 7, even if it took a very roundabout way to get to 7 games.
Yeah, that's an absolutely valid point that is worth acknowledging. My only pushback would be, I agree with that assessment wholeheartedly in terms of getting the Rays pitching ready. To me, the difference is that, yes, the Yankees have Garrett Cole, but the Yankees don't have the same plethora of arms, especially in the starting rotation, that the Dodgers do, which is why the Dodgers are so much better than everybody other team in this league on paper. Is you go Kershaw, Buehler, and then you have all of these other options to choose from. And traditionally, the bullpen has been pretty good. It might not be quite as good as the Yankees. It's definitely not as good as the Rays, but they've got so many different arms to throw at you that you can't look at anybody in that rotation or anybody that you're going to see with the exception of maybe Jansen in the 9th inning right now, and say there's the hole in that pitching staff the way you can with the Yankees or the Braves or the Astros without Verlander or something like that. But it's a fair point. To assume that the Dodgers are just going to put up 8 runs a game, I think is a fairly ridiculous notion based on what we've seen from the Rays so far and the bats that they've more or less quieted.
Mm-hmm.
I guess if I was to play devil's advocate, and that now this isn't in response to you specifically, Josh, at all. I've just been thinking about this. If I was to play devil's advocate of my own position and sort of try to pick apart some of these things about the Dodgers, I would say that, like, if I was making the opposite case, I would say, look, we see Clayton Kershaw struggle in his last 2 starts. He's been dealing with injury. I'm not saying he's going to struggle again, but he struggled in his last 2 starts. He's been dealing with a back issue. And some of these other starters besides him and Buehler that the Dodgers are relying on are not super experienced postseason starters. I mean, we think about the Dodgers as this super experienced postseason team, but there's no Kenta Maeda, no Hyunjin Ryu. These are a lot of rookies, a lot of younger players. Some of their top relievers are younger. And the Dustin Mays, the Julio Urias, the Tony Gonsolins of the world are not as experienced in the postseason. So, I mean, that's the devil's, that's if I was to play the other way, is that I could see, and particularly with the Dodgers pitching they only having a short turnaround here, the fact that Kershaw goes game 1, but if Buehler goes game 2, that's on short rest. Like they are in a little bit of a pitching situation where if some of those starters do falter, I could see it falling apart for them.
It's a good point. Certainly. Anything else? I'm all out of things to talk about. Anybody else got anything?
Whole teams got here by doing what they do, which is not a testament that you can succeed in this sport doing it multiple ways. They stay true to who they were and have a chance at a championship because of it.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's an interesting case study to look at. There might not be a team in American sports that spends more money than the Dodgers do right now. And there's a very and you can't talk about the Rays in a larger context without talking about how little money they spend. And in baseball, unlike any other sport in this country, that's a important thing to consider without a salary cap. But yeah, 2 very different teams who approach roster building and just baseball in 2 very different ways. And getting to see them go head to head will certainly be a treat.